Well, hello, boys and girls, and welcome back to Library Class with Mr. S. We have been reading The Mouse and the Motorcycle, and we only have 2 exciting chapters left. Before the weekend, where did we leave off? Let's see. The boy Keith was very, very sick, and Ralph was trying to get him aspirin when he was caught by 2 delightfully whimsical teachers who trapped him under a glass and dumped him out the window. When we left off, he was literally hanging on to a vine. So we're going to start with chapter 12. Chapter 12 is called An Errand of Mercy. And I think I should point out there are only 2 chapters left, just 12 and 13, and then we're done with this book. So we're going to finish it up this week, and we're going to move on to something else too. So here we go. Chapter 12, An Errand of Mercy. Owls, thought Ralph, as he clung to the Virginia creeper vine and filled his lungs with the cool night air that was such a relief after the stuffy drinking glass. I've always wanted to climb down this vine and explore the ground floor, he reminded himself grimly, and now I have to. Ralph had never before been outdoors beneath the moon and stars. He felt small and frightened and alone. Slowly, paw over paw, he worked his way along the shoots and tendrils. An owl uncomfortably close in the pine tree hooted, and Ralph huddled, shivering in the shadow of a leaf, aware that he was losing precious seconds. A night wind rattled the windows, and the owl glided off towards the parking lot. Ralph inched his way down the vine. It was a long, winding route full of detours to the ground floor window, which, to Ralph's relief, was open. Upon reaching the sill, Ralph leapt to the floor of the room in which 3 young men of college age were sleeping, 2 beds and 1 in a sleeping bag on the floor. An aspirin! I must find an aspirin, thought Ralph, darting under the bed. He bumped into a dust mouse, which startled him, but he did not find an aspirin. He was in such a hurry, he ran right over the man in the sleeping bag instead of taking the time to go around. There, under the dresser, gleaming in a shaft of moonlight, he saw a round, white pill. He went closer. Yes, it really was an aspirin tablet. At last! Ralph was positive it was an aspirin, and not some other pill because it had letters stamped on it. Ralph could not read the letters, but he knew they stood for aspirin. He had been warned about them often enough. Now all Ralph had to do was figure out how to get the pill upstairs to room 215. Telling himself that, in spite of all that happened that night, it could not be much past 1 o'clock in the morning, Ralph half pushed, half rolled the aspirin tablet around the man in the sleeping bag to the door. He shoved it under the door and with great difficulty squeezed under himself. The first floor carpet was thicker and of better quality than the one on the second floor. Ralph worked his way with the aspirin down the hall to the lobby where the night clerk was asleep on a couch. The glassy eyes of deer heads mounted on the knotty pine walls seemed to stare at Ralph. So did the giant eyes of the television set. Slowly, he moved his precious load across the lobby to the stairs, and there he stopped. How could he manage to get the aspirin up those stairs? He picked it up and tried lifting it, even though he knew he could not reach the first step while holding it. The night clerk tossed on the couch and made a gobbling, snorting noise. Ralph dropped the aspirin in a panic and looked wildly about for a hiding place. With one terrified leap, he dived under the grandfather clock between the elevator and the stairs. It was immediately plain from the dust that no one had ever cleaned underneath the clock. Ralph struggled to control a sneeze. Above him, the works of the clocks began to make grinding noises. Achoo! The sneeze could not be held back. Boing! The clock struck 1:30, forcing Ralph to clap his hands over his ears. How his famous ancestor, the one that ran up the clock, hickory-dickory-dock, stood the racket, he did not know. Peeking out, Ralph discovered the night clerk had slept soundly through the din, so he ventured out from under the clock to continue his struggle with the aspirin tablet. Since carrying the pill up the stairs was impossible, Ralph had to find another way. The elevator? Ridiculous. A mouse could not run an elevator. Then, quite unexpectedly, a whole plan of action popped into his mind. Ralph had genuine inspiration. First, he rolled the aspirin to a safe place behind an ashtray stand next to the elevator. Then, empty-pawed, he climbed the stairs to the second floor and ran down the hall to room 215, where he squeezed under the door. Keith was still half awake, his eyes glinting with fever under their heavy lids. "Psst," said Ralph. "I found an aspirin for you." What?" said Keith. "An aspirin tablet. I found an aspirin." "Where is it?" Keith was now more awake. "Down on the first floor." "Oh," Keith said, very disappointed. "Now wait," said Ralph. "I can get it up here, but I've got to have some help. You have to let me take your sports car." "You're too young," mumbled Keith. "I am not." And it was true that Ralph felt very much older than he had when he lost the motorcycle. "Come on, you need that aspirin, don't you?" "You've already lost my motorcycle." "Oh, come on!" Ralph was growing more impatient as he felt the night slipping by. "If you won't let me take the sports car, will you let me take the ambulance?" I guess so." Keith did not feel equal to arguing with a determined mouse. He picked up his ambulance from the bedside table and set it on the floor. "Here you go." "One more thing," said Ralph anxiously. "Do you think you could manage to open the door for me? I know you feel terrible, but it's the last thing I'll ask, honest, and I promise I'll have the aspirin up here in no time." Keith sighed, but he slid his feet out from under the sheet and, hanging on to the bedside table, reached over and opened the door. Ralph was already seated inside the white ambulance with the red cross painted on the side. Wee-er, wee-er, wee-er. He took the corner into the hall on 2 wheels and sped down the bare floor between the wall and the carpet until he came to room 211. Here he slowed down and then went wee-er, wee-er, good and loud. This carried him, as he planned, to the elevator. It was a crucial moment. Now he would find out if his plan was going to work. The little dog in room 211 began to whimper and then bark just as Ralph had planned. In a moment, the door opened and the man stumbled out with the little dog in his arms. "Oh, all right," he grumbled. "I'll walk you. Stop barking, will you?" Ralph waited, his paws tense on the steering wheel. The man walked groggily to the closed elevator door where he managed, in spite of the wriggling dog in his arms, to push the button. Soon, the elevator door slid open. Ralph knew that timing was important. The man entered the elevator, the dog barking. "Wee-oo, wee-oo," said Ralph, hard enough and fast enough to shoot the ambulance at great speed across the yawning crack between the floor of the hall and the floor of the elevator, before the man turned around. As the dog's owner turned, Ralph steered skillfully around his feet and parked the ambulance behind him. The man pressed the button, the doors closed, and the elevator actually began to descend. "Do you know what you are?" the man sleepily said to the dog. "You are a nuisance. Ugh, that's what, a 4-footed, hair-covered nuisance." The dog ignored his master. "I know you're down there," he yapped to Ralph. "If I could just get down, I'd get you." Ralph did not answer. He was taking no chances. He waited quietly inside his ambulance until the man had carried the dog out before he drove out of the elevator. He jumped out of the ambulance, opened the rear doors, seized the precious aspirin, and boosted it inside. Slamming the doors, he ran around and jumped into the driver's seat. There was not an instant to lose. Wee-oo, wee-oo, wee-oo. The ambulance moved toward the open elevator, but unfortunately by this time, Ralph was significantly out of breath. The front wheels of the ambulance caught in the crack between the floor of the lobby and the floor of the elevator. The ambulance was stuck. "Oh, no," thought Ralph. "Not now. I can't fail now. Wee-oo, wee-oo," he managed to gasp. The wheels spun, but the ambulance could not move. Ralph jumped out, put his shoulder to the rear of the vehicle, and pushed with all of his strength. Nothing happened. In a moment, the man would be returning with the dog. Desperate, Ralph climbed back into the ambulance. He took a breath so deep he thought his lungs would surely burst. Wee-hoo, wee-hoo, wee-hoo. He made the sound hard and fast and high-pitched. The wheels spun. The ambulance moved, slowly at first. Then, as the tires got a grip on the floor of the elevator, it shot out of the crack and across the elevator and hit the rear wall with a bump. Ralph collapsed over the steering wheel, limp with relief, just as the man came back through the lobby with his dog. "Oh, I guess some boy lost his toy ambulance," muttered the man, more awake now, as he stepped in and pressed the button. "Toy?" thought Ralph indignantly. "This ambulance is carrying medical supplies to the sick." "Boy, my foot," yapped the dog. "It's that dastardly mouse. Let me down and I'll get him." Ralph did not try to answer. He was saving all his breath now to get the ambulance across that crack once more. The man slapped the dog lightly on the nose and said, "Be quiet. I took you outside, didn't I?" Fortunately, the elevator door stayed open behind the man as he walked out, so Ralph had no trouble driving the ambulance out and down the hall to room 215. Whew! The door had blown shut, but he didn't care. He jumped out of the ambulance and ran around the back to where he unloaded the aspirin, shoved it under the bedroom door, and squeezed under after it. "Hey, Keith, I've got it!" Ralph was filled with triumph. "I've brought you the aspirin." Whew, that was really exciting. That was the end of chapter 12. We only have one more chapter to go, and then we've finished this book, boys and girls. I sure hope you liked it. It was a little exciting. I wasn't sure if Ralph was going to get out of that crack between the elevator and the door with the ambulance or not. It was pretty cool. As you think about this story that we read, what was your favorite part? See if you can remember it, or go back through the videos and watch them again if you need to. And in the comment section, tell me your favorite part of Mouse and the Motorcycle right before we finish it tomorrow. And don't forget to click the turned in button to let me know that you've seen this video. Hang in there, one more to go. I will see you guys tomorrow. Have a great night. Stay safe, everybody.
Three blind mice, three blind mice. See how they run, see how they run. They all ran after the farmer's wife. She jumped on the table and dropped her knife. Did you ever see such a sight in your life as three blind mice?